So having just been away for a few days always makes me reflect on what I have here. And I was thinking to just talk a little bit about living in community and how useful it is. It's quite clear when you like start leading a retreat or do any teaching or even just leave here sometimes, what the benefit is of living with people who have similar direction in life and similar values. And there's it was quite clear to me that almost everything, if not everything I was teaching, I had been taught by venerable children and my other Dharma teachers. And the things that I had any clarity on were things that mostly had been pointed out to me. And so it's the thing about the value of the mirror and being in a place where things are, there are so few distractions that you just learn to see things and then face things and work with things, and with a lot of support for growth and not support for stagnation. And sometimes like last time I left the Abbey, I think it was, or in the last year I was visiting some friends, and I realized that one was having quite a bit of difficulty, and that there was a lot of support for the person to kind of stay in this rut. And that doesn't really happen here. So that's, I think, quite good, even though it can be challenging. So that's the main thing. And when I need to, sometimes I need to remind myself of very specific things about living in community so I can work with my mind better. And some of the things that come up for me is to realize that Thich Nhat Hanh has many years of directing a monastic community, and his words usually kind of help me to set my mind straight and recharge some enthusiasm. And it's usually over the things that I'm having trouble with, of course. And so some of the things that he said that I've found particularly beneficial are that being a spiritual practitioner and living in community, it's not about things being fair. It's not about people paying attention to you. It's not about being loved, which are all kind of things that come up. And so when I find those things going on in my mind, I remember what he said, and then I broaden my perspective, and I almost always think about what Geshe Sopa said. He said when he was teaching here, you need to know why you're here. And that is like the way I can be firm with myself and like, why are you here? And I'll ask myself when I'm kind of in any kind of funk and I'm going to choose to get out, I'll come to that question, like, why am I here? And what's the bigger picture? And try to expand my mind so I can let go of what I'm usually obsessing about. So I think that Thich Nhat Hanh says that we need to hear the truth about ourselves as others see it. And that's one thing that's a huge benefit about living in community when it's done in a way with a lot of compassion and love and transparency, which I think we have a lot of here. And he also talks about when people leave community, which I think is, I've certainly thought, not seriously, but I've had this habit my whole life of when things aren't going well, I kind of plan a vacation. And so I bring that here. So I usually, like if things aren't going well, I usually think about being some other place. Not like I'm thinking so much about leaving, I'm just thinking about being some other place. And so he talks about that because that's not an uncommon thing when you're anywhere. When you're in a family, when you're in a community, when you're in a job, when you're anything that you've got some commitment to, things come up, and when things aren't going well, we kind of don't want to be there. It's very common. And so what he says is that we're running from the present moment. And so I try to work with that and see really, is that true and what is going on? And that usually helps me as well. And then I realize that what he says is true, that if you're running from the present moment, I mean, of course, there's many reasons why people make changes in their life. But sometimes people are going towards, at least this is how I work. I try to make changes to go towards something. I don't try to make changes to leave something. I usually am going towards something, and those have been the good decisions in my life. But if I was leaving something because I wasn't going to resolve things, what he says about this is that in that kind of circumstance, that doesn't usually lead to success in one's Dharma practice. And from his experience, he's seen that when people leave a community, often their practice doesn't hold too well. And we have that experience when people, they write us a lot, how it's so much easier for them to practice here. So I, like to think about, the wisdom of our teachers and try to use that, rely on their wisdom rather than my own ignorance. So one thing that's in the Vietnamese tradition is they say, if the monk or the monastic leaves the Sangha, the monastic will be destroyed, just as if the tiger comes down from the mountain, the tiger will be caught. And then Thich Nhat Hanh says, the practitioner may stand solid as the lord of the mountains and forests, and may speak as powerfully as the tiger roars. But if he leaves the Sangha body and goes out on his own, he's just like the tiger who has left the mountain. And so I don't take that to mean a person doesn't go and make their own decisions and do things. I take that as a warning and a wake-up call to look at my own mind. How am I doing things? Why am I doing things? And what kind of support do I need? And what kind of support do I need to give others when people are, any kind of way people are moving in their practice, and that their deepest aspiration is to actualize the Dharma in their mind. So that's, I find that quote kind of helpful because it feels like that. It feels like when you're here and things are all together, that there's a certain kind of strength, and there is. But also there's so many conditions that support that we don't have in other places. It doesn't mean we won't make changes and go other places. It means we need to look carefully, and when we make changes or when people make changes, we need to try to be helpful to ourselves and helpful to others.